This video describes the steps required to transfer the IntelligentGolf renewal invoices into Xero. It assumes that the steps to complete the renewal process in IntelligentGolf have been completed. It also assumes that you are moderately proficient in the use of Microsoft Excel. In this video, the process is demonstrated on an Apple Mac, but the Windows process would be similar. We start on the Admin Membership screen. Click on the Bills Raised option to display the following screen. Select Date Created and then put today's date or the date you generated the bills in the date range. This will make sure we only pick up bills created for this particular renewal process. In this part of the screen, make sure Split into Items is set. The total due should match the amount expected for this particular renewal process. For people paying by direct debit, the report specifies the date of the final payment as the due date. This is not important, as you will see later. We will be hard coding the applicable invoice date and due date when we import the CSV into Xero. Assuming that you are happy with the numbers, you now need to download this data into a CSV file. You do this by clicking on the Download CSV button on the right of the screen. You'll be prompted to enter your name, and note this is your name and not your IG login details. Once you've done that, click on Confirm Download, and the CSV file will be downloaded to your Downloads folder. Here you can see the CSV file we exported from IG and opened in Excel. You can see that we have one or more rows for each member. That's because when we created the file in IG, we specified Split into Items. Each row corresponds to a separate chargeable item, such as annual fee, locker storage, etc. Each row will correspond to a line item on the member's invoice in Xero. I would suggest that you scroll to the bottom and make sure that the total agrees with what you expect for this renewal. So let's scroll down to the bottom. That looks good. So let's go back to the top again. As I mentioned earlier, invoice due date should be the 1st of June 26 for everyone, but IG will have set the date to the date of the final payment for direct debit payers. We will fix that before we import into Xero. At this stage we don't have quite all the information we need to import into Xero. Before we proceed, we will switch into Xero and download the latest invoice import template. Now we are in Xero. We are on the Invoices screen. We are going to go to the option that says Import. We click that, and now we're looking at the Invoice Import screen. There are instructions here about how you import data into Xero, which we're going to look at in detail. It involves writing the data out into a particular format, and that format is governed by a template that's provided by Xero. Now that template hasn't changed in the several years that I've been doing this, but each year I do download the template again just to make sure that nothing has changed. So we go to the option here which says Download Template File, and in the next step we're going to look at that template file. I've now opened the Xero template in Excel, and you can see all the column names in here. This is all the data we need to provide to Xero. The columns with an asterisk are the required fields, the rest are optional. So we're only going to look at the mandatory ones. For example, Xero needs the contact name, invoice number, invoice date. Now one of the first things I do with this template is to convert it into an Excel table, and you'll see why shortly. I prefer to work with tables. So let's select this row and we say Insert Table, tick the box Table has a header row, and now we've converted to a table. And now we're ready to start populating this data. As we can see, IG has done a great job of exporting most of the data that we need, and we will see soon how we can generate the missing data. But for now, let's start by copying the data we do have. For this purpose, I have two windows open in Excel, so let's switch to the IG data window. The first column we're going to look at is member name, and as we know, IG has already given us all of the member names, which have been obscured on this screen for data privacy reasons. So what we're going to do is select this entire column, and when we've selected the column, we're going to copy it, switch back to the other window, pop the cursor here and say Command V, and we now have all those names in our template. We don't need email address or any of this other data. The next thing that we need is invoice number, which we don't have at the moment, so we're going to come back to that. Invoice date we can specify because we're going to override what it says in IG. If you remember, the due dates are not quite right for direct debit payers, so we're just going to put in here a date, and the due date is the 1st of June 2026 in our case, which we're going to hard code. And because this is a table, it gives us an option here that says overwrite all cells in this column with this formula. So now all of the populated rows have got this invoice date, and the due date is going to be the same. So we're going to say the same equals 1st of June 2026. We could have copied it, but I've put it again. And once again, we're going to populate the whole table with that data. The next thing we have to put in, which is a compulsory field, is description. So description is you'll see when we go back into the export from IG. The description column in the template corresponds to the item in IG. So we're going to select this entire column and copy it, and then switch back to the template. Now back to the description column, Command V to paste it, and now we have that as well. Quantity, let's expand this column. Quantity is going to be 1. We're going to put that in there and copy that down. The unit amount is going to be the value from the export, so let's go back to that. Unit amount is here. Excluding VAT and including VAT are the same, so it doesn't matter which one we use. So we select the column, copy it, and then back to the template. So now we paste the values into the unit amount column, and now we have the values. Account code we don't have, so we're going to come back to that in a moment. Tax type we can put in. We know that should be no VAT. And populate the table. So that's all of the fields we can fill in, but we are missing 2 bits of information, which are an account code and an invoice number. And we're going to go back into the IG generated data to look at how we can actually generate that. We've switched back into the data that was outloaded from IntelligentGolf, and I'm going to convert this into a table first of all. As you know, I like working with tables, so we select all the data and we say insert table, and the table has headers. Before we do anything, let's give this table a name. So we see here we can call this something like, let's just call it fees. Okay. Now, after the member ID, we're going to insert a column, which is going to be the invoice number. In this column, we're going to put this formula, equals concat. So we're going to concatenate a prefix before the member ID. So the prefix, we can have something like MF26, which could stand for member fee, year is 26, and then we want to concatenate that with the member ID field. So we just click in that column and it adds member ID in with a closed bracket. Now, you can see for this member, we've got prefix MF26 1012, which is the member ID. And now we're going to propagate that through all the cells in this table. So now for each line item, we have got the invoice number. And of course, if a member has multiple line items like member ID 1015, they will all have the same invoice number. Now we come to the final piece of missing information, which is the accounting code which Xero requires, and we don't currently have in IntelligentGolf. What we do have is an item description, and we can equate these item descriptions to accounting codes, or nominal codes as we used to call them in Sage. So we have created a second sheet in this spreadsheet. This was a spreadsheet we exported from IG Remember. On this second sheet, which we call nominal codes, we have created a table which maps the item descriptions to a nominal code as per Sage or Xero. If you select this table and then click on Table in the header here, you'll see we've given this table a name also, and we've called it Nom Codes, which is going to be useful shortly when we create the formula. And now we have to replace the item descriptions in our data with these nominal codes. So if we go back to the first sheet, what we're going to do is we're going to insert a column here in the table. And we can give it a name. It doesn't have to have a name, but let's call it Nom Codes for now. This is not really important. And now for each row here, we're going to look up in that table the item description and add the nominal code. And we do that by using an Excel formula called XLOOKUP. So here we'd start typing a formula equals XLOOKUP. The first parameter is the item that we're looking for, which is the actual description. And then we put a comma and we say where we're going to look. We're going to look in this array here. And then we put another comma, and then we say what we're going to replace it with, which is this array here. And then a final close bracket. So we've got XLOOKUP item. We're going to look in the subscription field in the nom codes table, and we're going to replace it with the nominal code field from the nom codes table. So if we go back here and hit enter, you see we have added the number 4002, which is the nominal code for annual fee. Now we're going to propagate that down through the rest of the table. So now we have got the missing data. We've generated the missing data being invoice number and nominal codes. What remains now is for us to actually add this data to the Xero template. So we go to invoice number column, we select the entire column and we copy it, and then we switch into the sales invoice template and we go to the invoice number, and now we're going to paste values. So now in the template we've got the invoice number. Now we need to get the accounting code. So let's go back to the other spreadsheet where we generated the data. And we go to the nominal codes field. Again, select that column and copy it. And then switch back to our template. And in the accounting code field, once again, paste values. So now in this template we have all the information required in order to import these invoices into Xero. Now we're ready to load this template into Xero, but I suggest before loading that very large file we actually test it with just one or two members to ensure that we haven't missed out any fields or got any formatting wrong. So I've cut down this template just to the first couple of members and created a new version called test. We also need to save this now back as a CSV file, because remember the import into Xero has to be a CSV file. So we put type is CSV, whatever that is, comma separated values. Save that as a CSV. And now let's go back into Xero. So we're back on the screen within Xero. From the invoices menu, there's an option for import your sales invoices. We saw this earlier where we downloaded the template. Now we're going to select the file to import. So we click on Browse, and this is the short template we just created just with 2 members in. And we're going to say Upload. Click on Import. And it's telling us this import contains 2 invoices. The following will be imported into Xero. 2 new draft invoices will be imported. Complete import. And that tells us what we have done. And you can see the 2 that we just created for the import due on the 1st of June and the amounts due. So that's looking good. So we can now proceed to go back to the original template with all the rows in, ignoring these 2 members that we have actually already imported, and do this again. So now we're back at the import template screen. We click on Browse, and now we're looking for the large file, the large CSV file with all the invoices, as opposed to the test one we used earlier. So we select this one, then we click on Upload, and now we click on Import, and then we wait a little while for that to do its stuff. Now Xero is telling us that it has found 640 new draft invoices which will be imported by the next step. Click on Complete Import to continue, and now wait again while it does its stuff. Xero now confirms that 640 draft invoices had been imported, which you can see below. Be aware that these invoices are imported into Xero as draft invoices. They need to be approved before they are issued to members. This can be done from the screen individually or in bulk. You can also check that the outstanding amount in Xero for the applicable due date corresponds to the expected amount as calculated in IG. Going forward, as new members join the club in the forthcoming membership year, the office would calculate the pro rata fee for the year as applicable and manually raise the invoice in Xero. In addition, the members' details are added to IntelligentGolf in the normal way, specifying membership category and all additional subscriptions as applicable. In this way, the appropriate invoice details will be generated by IG for export to Xero for subsequent annual renewals.